What's up, my friends? In this video, we're going to take a look at how to get started playing a rogue in Ashes of Creation. Now, there are a ton of aspects of this game beyond just the combat. However, the combat is a massive part of the game still. So if you want to be effective in any part of the game, knowing how to fight well on your chosen class is still going to be crucial. The focus of this video is going to be explicitly on early rogue combat from levels 1 through 10, so you can start destroying everything very quickly with the most powerful ability rotations available to you. Keep in mind, this is a very sort of group-oriented game by default. However, this guide is going to be focused on how to be effective leveling as a rogue solo. If you are able to solo mobs effectively at this phase of the game, you're going to be able to use those same exact rotations to carry your group's DPS as well. Once early access is out on December 11th, I'll be following this guide up with a more advanced rogue guide, taking us into deeper levels with the Harbinger update, as well as some more beginner's guides covering the other classes. So if you don't want to miss that stuff, be sure to subscribe to the channel. And if you find this video useful, don't forget to like, comment, and share it, as all those things really help me out by letting the algorithm push the video. Okay, so first we're going to start out with the absolute basics of combat like you've never played this game before. Then we're going to take a look at our abilities and how we build a rotation as we level from 1 to 10. We'll close it out quickly by talking about items, gear, and quests. Okay, so similar to a lot of MMORPGs, Ashes of Creation operates off of a tab targeting system. So you can see if I press tab, I will be targeting the nearest thing in front of me. And there's no aiming in this game, right? I have an ability rotation based on my class's abilities that I'll be able to choose from the skill tree here. Now, the biggest difference you're going to notice right away in the combat from other sort of tab targeting MMOs is there is addition of some Souls-like elements, including the fact that we have a stamina bar. We can dodge, we can also sprint, we can block, and all of these things consume our stamina. My keybinds are different than default, but you can see all three of these stamina consuming abilities down here at the bottom left of our action bar. If I go to this fourth button right below that, we can see our current weapon equipped with some details on how the auto attack works. So one of the other big differences from this and other MMOs is that we actually can have two weapons equipped at one time, think New World, and we can on the fly switch between these weapons during combat. So we have a ranged weapon and we have a melee weapon, and we can set a keybind to sort of hot swap these during combat, even mid these auto attack sequences. So we can see here, if I hold my auto attack button down, which I have on mouse 5, it's going to do this 6-hit combo. We can see the details of the damage in the combo for my daggers shown here. Same exact thing. If I switch to my bow, it's going to show sort of the auto attack sequence of the bow. You'll notice both of these, although they're a bit different, they end with a finisher. So every time you complete your weapon attack chain, it's going, the final attack is going to end with a guaranteed finisher. Now keep in mind, this is different than what is called a deadly finisher. So along with our class skill tree, we also have our weapon skill trees here. In this very first spot of the dagger tree or of any weapon tree, we are going to be able to select a deadly finisher. We can see right here, 25% chance to apply a deadly finisher that adds a bleed. So depending on the weapon, you can change what this is. So for dagger, at this phase, we have bleed, we have snare, which is a slow, we have wound, which is basically anti-heal. So what this means is that every time I use my finisher, my 6th swing, there's a 25% chance for that finisher to become a deadly finisher and proc this bleed. Now I can up the chances of this happening with these extra 10% nodes up to the right of this. So now instead of 25%, my deadly finisher actually has a 55% chance of proccing. And when it does proc, it's going to apply this bleed. We can see that outlined here in the tooltip. Last thing on the weapon auto attacks, there is a pretty critical option under system, gameplay, combat, this auto attack enabled feature. So depending on your class and the way you like to play, you're going to either want auto attack enabled or not. And if we have it disabled, basically what that does is it makes it so we have to hold whatever our auto attack input is. So for me, it's mouse 5. So if I let go of mouse 5, it's going to stop. If I hold mouse 5, it's going to go. However, with this setting, I can make it so that once I press it, I can let go and it'll keep going. And I can even set it to automatically start after I do a melee or ranged ability. Now, I've messed with this option a lot on several different classes. I think using it and how you use it really depends on the class you're playing. For Rogue specifically, we have a couple abilities, mainly Flurry, that we can see right here. Flurry at the bottom of this tooltip, Flurry does not interrupt your weapon combo. So for Rogue specifically, we actually have to use the auto attack feature in order for Flurry to not interrupt our weapon combo. If I'm trying to just hold mouse button 5, I cannot fluidly use Flurry while holding mouse button 5. It'll work every once in a while, but it is not reliable at all, at least right now. So because of that, what we want to do is just enable auto attack. And we can even do this option where we make it so the auto attack starts after a melee ability. So instead of pressing my mouse button 5, I'm just going to use R to stab and see it goes right into the auto attack. You can tell your auto attack is started by the little kind of glow around this, and this will show the different phases of the attack. You can see it kind of changing the visual, and you can see the finisher is this like yellow one at the end. So using this as like a visual indicator will help you sort of determine where you're at in your auto attack combo. Another great way to do this is just opening the combat log. You can see very clearly kind of like what part of the combo you are on. Now, if I hit mouse button 5 again, it'll stop. And if I use ability again, it'll turn it back on. So for Rogue, basically what this lets us do is if we have auto attack on, we can use this flurry ability without it resetting or interrupting our auto attack combo. Rogue's unique resource is this thing called advantage. You can see up here, I have 1 out of 2 advantage. It's signified by this little bar filling up around my icon here. So if we take a look at advantage, it says you have gained the advantage. Certain attacks will consume this buff to gain powerful effects. So depending on what ability we're using, they have the opportunity to consume advantage in order to accelerate the effect. And we can see right there, it is on a bit of a timer where after a little bit, the advantage will go away. The other unique mechanic for Rogue starting out from level 1 is Ambusher. So whenever you attack anything from behind, you have a 10% bonus critical strike chance. And there are a few abilities that are going to be better from behind as well. One of the main ones being this level 1 ability. We start with Stab, which basically turns into Backstab if we are behind our target. We can see we're not only going to get the extra 10% crit chance from Ambusher, we're also going to get 50% more damage on this if we are behind our target. Another incredibly powerful ability that Rogues start with that will be essential to you being an expert level Rogue, and especially soloing, is the stealth mechanic. You can see all the details here. Basically, you have a stealth level. Other characters have a chance to see you based on their perception. It gives us a chance to sneak up on things from behind. When we do go into stealth, it gives us advantage. The other cool thing about stab is when we do use it from stealth, the cooldown is going to be halved. So if we backstab out of stealth as a starting point from level 1, we're going to be off to a great start. Now, the other thing about stealth that's extremely useful to know is we can use it to drop combat, and dropping combat can be exceptionally tough in this game sometime. But with stealth, at any point, if stuff is chasing me, as long as I can get around enough space to activate this, you'll see if I get close to him, like if I'm in vision, I can't activate it, but as soon as I'm out of vision, or it thinks I'm in a spot where I could hide, if I press it, I can actually fully cancel the combat. It behaves like Vanish. So you can use it in combat, but only if you're sort of out of vision and of stuff. And we'll talk a little more about that later as we talk about fleeing. So let's take all of our abilities out and build up a super strong Rogue rotation for these early levels starting from level 1. So we can see here, I start with these 3 things I just talked about. The first one including Stab. So for level 1, we're just going to have Stab, but we are going to be able to stealth. And remember, Stab turns into Backstab if we're behind our target. It also gets the cooldown halved if we use it from stealth. So level 1, we're going to start out with a Backstab. We're going to just poke stuff. If we are able to get behind it when it's doing like a skill shot, we definitely can reposition and still get a backstab, even if we don't have crowd control on things. You'll see there are abilities like Acrobatic Strike, Light Kick, that we're going to be able to use to get behind stuff. If we're not behind something, it's just going to be a normal stab. So it's going to be not as much damage, but it's still going to do something. Keep in mind, Stab also consumes advantage. So the combo, like when we stealth, we get an advantage. Now this is going to consume it for the bonus damage when we do the backstab. It's also going to apply Exposed, which is basically going to make more damage happen from debuffs, which is really going to benefit our bleeds and our hemorrhage, which we're going to be able to utilize as we get closer to level 10. Okay, so the very first ability I would recommend taking is Flurry. And this is essentially 3 charges, and it gives you increased attack speed. The other thing, like we talked about, is it does not interrupt our weapon combo. So now we have Stab and Flurry online at level 2. With this, we want to stealth, we want to backstab, and then we just basically want to Flurry to keep this attack speed buff up. You can kind of burn them all at once, or you can kind of, you know, make sure you always have a charge. But you basically, once you have Flurry online, you want to make sure you always have this Flurry buff rolling, so you're constantly leveraging that increased attack speed. Okay, so once we hit level 3 and get our second ability point, we are going to grab Lacerate. And this is going to get a lot better once we're able to consistently bleed with our dagger. But once you have this, I highly recommend for the dagger skill tree, starting off with bleed. Because if we are, and then going immediately for this increased percent chance, because if we're able to get targets bleeding with our finisher, then if we use Lacerate after that, they're going to hemorrhage. And hemorrhage is basically a significantly more powerful version of bleed. We can see bleed 15% bleed damage every second, lasting 6 seconds. Hemorrhage is 20% bleed damage every half second, lasting 5 seconds. So it's basically an accelerated bleed ticking for a little more every half second instead of every second. And these are separate debuffs, so they can actually stack with each other. So if something's bleeding and you use lacerate, they're going to be bleeding and hemorrhaging. So same thing here. We're going to open with a backstab. We're going to flurry to make sure that we have that attack speed rolling. And then we are going to dodge this kill shot if we can. As soon as we get a bleed proc from our deadly finisher is when we want to lacerate. You can lacerate early just to get it on cooldown if you want. That's just going to give you a bleed, but you are going to get the most value out of it when you actually lacerate after they're already bleeding. And once you get the first 4 points in your dagger, your bleed is essentially going to come 55% of the time after you do this 6th attack with the dagger, right? So when we hit level 4, we get our 3rd point. We're going to grab Acrobatic Strike. This is a really cool ability that essentially lets us lock our target in place facing the same direction and flip over them. If we use it while our target is facing us, it's going to give us advantage. It's also going to do a little bit of damage itself as well. So start with the backstab, get my speed going with flurry, wait for maybe a bleed to happen. But if this guy's facing me and I want to get another backstab, like let's say your stab's coming up, Acrobatic Strike, keep him facing this way, go for a nice backstab. See if we can wait for the bleed to proc here. So see, my bleed just proc for my dagger finisher. Now if I lacerate, he's not only bleeding, he's also hemorrhaging. And you can see the dot damage just kind of go crazy. So just like Acrobatic Strike is sort of some crowd control to set up us being behind our target to gain the extra 10% crit chance for amateur, but also be able to backstab, is kick. So you can think of Acrobatic Strike and kick in kind of like a similar bucket where they do kind of similar things. They're crowd control to set up backstabs. The thing that's a little bit better for kick is it's actually going to cancel like abilities and cast, right? So let's say I start fighting this guy and he's gonna do, his big like heavy strike. By the way, when you're facing the raiders, this heavy slash, you can literally just sidestep it always. You don't even have to use stamina on it. But let's say I thought that was gonna hit me. When he does it again, we'll hemorrhage him here. I just got him bleeding. You see a little pop up here when you actually get the bleed through. I can cancel that ability or any ability. Let's say it's a healer and they're casting a heal. I can cancel that ability at the end of its cast with a kick. So you kind of want to hold your kick as like a defensive ability cancel to stop big abilities, important casts. Like these fire arsonists are going to throw a big fireball. You want to kick that at the end of the cast. The archers are doing like a big kill shot. You want to kick that at the end of the cast if you don't want to eat it or if you don't have the stamina to dodge. And not only is it this crowd control, it lets you move behind your target and go for more backstabs. The other thing with tripped is if you have advantage and use it, it's going to turn into an AoE trip and add a second. So if you want like a group crowd control ability and you have advantage, kick is going to be able to accomplish that as well. Okay, so once we're level 5 and we have our first 4 points in, it's going to open up this top part of the tree. Now, I think one of the best things about Rogue, especially at this level, is the Thrash Flurry combo. And once you get level 6 and have your 5th ability point, you're gonna be able to bring this online, and this absolutely slaps. So the way Thrash works is it deals 80% physical damage, but then it can be activated up to 2 more times in a short frequency. However, you must use another ability before it can be recast. If you flurry and then thrash, you can always flurry again. And because you have 3 flash charges, you can every single time you thrash, if you have your flurry charges up at least 2, you can get all 3 thrashes through, right? So essentially, like one of the best opens we have out of stealth is, let's say, whoa, that was weird. He bashed me mid acrobatic strike. Let's say I just open up this guy with a backstab out of stealth. I want to thrash, flurry, thrash. And then they're likely going to be bleeding by that point. Then I can use my lacerate and it's going to be hemorrhaging on top of the bleed. So one more look. Once we get thrash, the opening is going to be stealth up. Go for a backstab, thrash, flurry, thrash. That's going to get all 3 of your thrashes through. You're also going to have the attack speed stacked from your flurry. As soon as they're bleeding, use lacerate to get the hemorrhage through. And we can see that's going to do a nice, decent chunk of damage. You want to try to use flurry charges to keep the buff up as much as possible, but you always want to try to have 1, if not 2 flurry charges. You can use other abilities to get the other casts of thrash through, but it's just very reliable if you thrash, flurry, thrash, and then you still have all your other abilities lined up to use when you want to. So we have 5 ability points invested right now at level 6. Once we hit level 7 and get our 6th point, we are going to drop it in Soothing Shadows. And this is just very good for sustain as we're moving between mobs. This is going to give us healing when we enter stealth. So it's like a really nice, as you're going like mob to mob, especially solo leveling, it's a really nice little boost of health where if you're farming kind of stuff around the right level and you're doing nice combos where things aren't getting much of a chance to attack you, you can even like gain health between mobs if you're sort of locking stuff down with the proper rotation, right? So once you do the thrash thing, oftentimes I'll do the acrobatic strike, get behind for another backstab, because remember our first backstab was low cooldown because we did out of stealth. And then as soon as they're bleeding, use the lacerate, wait for thrash to come back up, and then you can go back into the thrash flurry setup. Hold your kick for that defensive spell cancel like we were talking about, or if you have an opportunity to go for a backstab when acrobatic strike is not up. Once we hit level 8 and have our 7th ability point, we are going to grab double strike. And this is really fun because it basically just lets us double backstab. There are certain situations where you can use it to guarantee a hemorrhage from lacerate, which basically the way double strike works is it will do whatever ability you use last, either stab, lacerate, or thump. Because we're not running thump, at least yet, our double strike can either imitate our stab, which will be backstab if we're behind the target, or our lacerate. So if you want a guaranteed hemorrhage, like with nothing going on, even out of stealth, like mid-combat, you can lacerate and then double strike, and you'll always be able to get that hemorrhage through, guaranteed. I use it that way occasionally. The way I use it more often is to mimic the backstab, and you'll see it adds a really nice kind of double tap to the backstab mechanic if we time it well off the open. So yeah, I stealth and get this nice bit of health back from the soothing shadows as I move between mobs here. So here's a healer. This is someone who we want to keep an eye out for the heal cast. We want to try to kick it at the end of the cast, right? But let's take a look at using double strike with the backstab. So I stab, flurry, thrash, flurry, back behind my target. Well, he turned, but double strike, backstab. So see how I just basically double tapped him with the and if I would have lacerated in time, I would have also got the hemorrhage through. And we see there's so much going on. I missed the first heal, but I saw that one. I kicked it. So now he does not get that heal dot through. And he's also on the ground, setting me up for more backstabs. We can see, even if you don't get the entry out of stealth, you can still just basically rotate the same combo on someone, you know, running up on them. You just don't get that first initial backstab open. And we can see if you kind of move like this when you're fighting, working your way around stuff, you can often still get backstab credit, even if something is not crowd controlled. So for level 9 and 10, there's actually a couple options. I think Trounce can be good for AoE. I think foreshadowing is really good, just like in general. So what I would recommend after testing some different stuff is I would take foreshadowing at level 9, okay? And this is what gonna grant us guile. So evasion increased by 20% on our next weapon combo finisher, gain advantage last 7 seconds. So this is low-key just gonna make opening up out of stealth significantly better because we're gonna have the evasion. It's gonna give our second backstab once it's off of cooldown advantage from getting another one from our finisher. However, when we hit level 10, there is like a really strong poison sap combo that is not only good for damage, it's good for sustain, and the poison stacks really well with the dot damage we're already doing with our bleed hemorrhage. So what I would recommend is at level 10, you drop foreshadowing. You don't get trounce yet, like I had earlier. Instead, you go one of these poisons. So I think the best poison overall right now at this part of the game for us is this withering. This is just going to make it so everything we attack has 25% reduced attack speed, 25% reduced cast speed. So just a very strong defensive one. If we're fighting a lot of healers, we can opt into the wound poison, which is basically anti-heal. If we're having mana problems, we can opt into the draining poison, which is essentially going to give us mana sustain. But I think withering poison is going to be a really safe bet to make stuff deal less damage to you. Once we select that and have our level 10 skill point, I'm just going to take it out of double strike right now, but you wouldn't have to do this once you're level 10. You are going to be able to take sap alongside this. So we can see what this does. Stabs your target with a draining dagger that deals damage and consumes up to 10 stacks of poisoned to apply sap. So sap, think of sap as almost the way hemorrhage is to bleed, almost like an amped up bleed. That's how sap is to poison, where this creates an increased poison effect if the target is already poisoned. So once I have these two abilities locked in here, you'll notice the poison, it's not something I like put on ahead of combat. I actually pop it in combat and it only lasts 10 seconds. We can see it up here. And so now when I'm attacking, we're gonna start seeing some of these poison stacks come through, right? So he's weakened, he's taking the increased damage, but he's also now taking this necrotic damage. As I continue attacking, we can see the poison stacks starting to build up here, right? So we got to 6 stacks before the poison actually ran off from the cooldown. Now, once the poison is on, at any point during this ticking, I can use sap. This is going to consume the poison stacks, turn it into this increased necrotic coming from sap. Now, the other really goated thing about this ability is we're going to get healed from some percentage of that damage. Sorry, for all of that damage. Heals the rogue the same amount. So all the damage you're getting from the sap necrotic, you're getting directly back as health. So this combined with Soothing Shadows is going to do a ton for our sustain once we hit level 10, letting us really just churn mob from mob from mob extremely kind of quickly and efficiently. You'll see here as we level up a little more, we are even going to be able to select a second poison alongside our first one with a separate ability cooldown. Okay, so putting it all together with the poison, we want to pop our poison immediately after we backstab out of stealth. So it's backstab, poison, thrash, flurry, thrash, flurry, thrash, get behind him again, go for our second backstab, now use our necrotic, now use our hemorrhage, and look, we're just cooking, baby. It's so much DPS when you line up the combo properly. We want to open with a backstab from stealth. We want to poison. Then we want to thrash, flurry, thrash, flurry, thrash. Get behind our target again. Go for a second backstab. Now use our necrotic. Get that healing back. We can AoE trip here because we had the advantage. It's a little too many mobs for us. After we kill this healer, we're going to get the hell out of here. I'll show you guys the escape. So now we can run. We can actually mount. Get on our mount sprint. Get behind a corner. Vanish. Just press stealth, and that's going to reset combat. So better than any other class. Ranger can kind of do it. Rogue can do it the best. They can always reset combat. So you'll find solo a lot of times you pull more mobs than you're capable of dealing with. The stealth reset is a fantastic way to sort of cope with that, right? And so here, look, we got the necrotic, we got the bleed, we got the hemorrhage. Look at all that dot damage just cooking this guy, right? And you can see also my auto attacks when there's two guys, they're hitting both of them, right? So, you know, you actually get a little more damage pump the more guys you have, which is why I think Trounce has a lot of viability as well. So here, like if I took this setup for 10, I would go double strike 11, I would go Trounce at 12. But you can see we just kind of continue, even mid-combat, we can continue sort of our normal tempo here. And just absolutely destroy stuff. And then we even get that nice health reset from Soothing Shadows when we hit stealth. Keep in mind, if you loot, it will break your stealth. But in general, the stealth is pretty generous. You don't have to be too far away from stuff to be able to pop it. And you can even pop it twice like that if you want a little extra healing without having to sit down. By the way, you can also sit and get your resting while you're stealth. You can also eat rations and get feasting while you're stealth as well. That right there makes the rogue stealth better than the ranger camouflage. We'll do one more full combo on this raider. Backstab, poison, thrash, flurry, thrash, flurry, thrash. Behind him with acrobatic strike, backstab again, sap, hemorrhage, dead. Wait for thrash to come back up and then kind of rinse and repeat that same exact sort of tempo, right? So thrash, flurry, thrash, flurry. I would have wanted to pop poison before that. I forgot to. See how I can kind of get a live backstab even without a crowd control if I sort of strafe around him? So that's like another tactic you want to utilize as rogue, as like, especially when they do an attack animation, you can almost always get behind him. So like when this guy does the big leap strike and we sidestep it, that's an easy way to get behind, not only for the bonus crit damage, but also just to guarantee the backstab. And because of this, even without backstab up, we basically always want to try to position behind targets. Even when we're like in groups and the tank is holding aggro, you almost always want to try to be behind your target always, or as often as possible on rogue. The final thing on the skill tree that we didn't take a look at is this passive. Basically just makes it so if we have advantage, our dodge gets converted to a quicker dash that costs less stamina. The big thing here is the stamina decrease. And I don't pay too much attention to this. It basically just, you know, will happen if you dodge and have advantage. And you can see I'm getting a little low here. It's maybe getting a little sketchy. I'm going to get a heal from my sap. I'm also going to pop a health salve, just to make sure I don't die here. And defenders, especially like one level up, this guy's a little tricky, right? So I probably want to go for another reset here. I'm going to sprint out until I can get a mount angle, get on my mount right away, until I can find a corner, hop off, stealth, get a quick reset, right? So that's probably a great time to just take a look at consumables real quick. I think the #1 things you're going to need as a rogue, the main thing you want to spend your glint on. So as you're killing stuff, you're going to get this glint. You can combine the glint into bigger glint. All of it sells for the same amount though. This is just like for inventory space. You're going to always want to sell your glint to vendors when you're in town, because when you die, because glint is basically gold, when you die, you can drop glint, but you can't drop silver, copper, and gold. So anytime you're in town, you want to convert your glint into silver. Early on for rogue, the main thing you want to be spending your silver on is rations and health salves. It's kind of so important to you being able to play effectively solo that I really think, like, I don't spend coin on really anything else for any of my characters for the most part, except for rations and health salves. So you want to be rolling out of town with like 2 stacks of rations, like 40, and you want to try to carry at least a few, if not like 10 or more health salves on you. So the rations you can buy at the very first vendor, if you start at this Aelin Divine Gate, the first starting zone. Sorry, I don't know much about the dwarf starting zone yet, but I can tell you where stuff is for this first starting zone. The rations vendor for both of these towns is just the main vendor, kind of right inside Lionhold here, right inside Samaya's Hope, like here. There are other random vendors where you can get rations from as well. One of them being this cookhouse. So see top right of the start gate in the ruins. There's this Flame and Formula Ember Spring. Highly recommend this Ember Spring as one to find and attune to early. This is where you can buy the health salve. So there's going to be a laboratory vendor right here. He's going to sell you these. That's the only place I can find right now where they're at. And then just to the northeast of that, you see this cookhouse. There's going to be a vendor right here that is going to sell you not only rations, but also these fresh salads. So this is just, if you have a little bit of extra coin, this is just a really strong consumable for rogues to be able to pop, especially early, because it just gives us bonus physical power. So if we just sit down and eat this for a little bit, it's like we have a piece of gear for the next hour that gives us an extra 206 physical power. It's actually very strong, makes a significant difference at this level. So the 3 consumables that we're always trying to hold on to for rogue are first rations, then health salves, then salads. Notice health salves aren't like true pots where you get all the health at once. They're like heal over time. So if you're looking like you're going to be in trouble in combat, or if you like know you're going to have to run away and it's going to be close, I would recommend just preemptively popping a health salve so you get that healing over time started. The other really important thing about combat in this game is like knowing when to use your dodge. So essentially, and what I realized, guys, we want to use it to dodge big abilities. So you saw that kill shot. It's not a true iframe. It just basically, if you successfully like time it, it's going to give you an increased evasion chance, a big increased evasion chance. So it's not guaranteed that you dodge it like a true iframe, but it significantly increases your chances of things actually missing. So like if you're fighting archers, you want to use your dodge to avoid the big kill shot. And the last thing we haven't really looked at yet that I'm not even sure how valuable it really is on rogue is the fact that we can block. So we see he hits me for 32 there, he hits me for 35 there. It blocks 3 out of 35 damage. So it's not a crazy amount of damage it negates, but it does negate a non-zero amount. And so if you're able to time your blocks on hits, it's an option. But the other thing to keep in mind is blocking does reset your weapon combo, right? So we can see if I block here after my 4th swing, I have to restart from ground 1, right? So that's the big downside to blocking. That's why I don't think blocking is really worth it, at least right now for rogue, but definitely a mechanic, you know, you could look to practice that might be useful in the future. Definitely going to be more useful for like tanks or people that have a shield. The other thing to keep in mind that I forgot to mention is just the fact that you can gather for experience, like leveling experience. You gain experience when you do gather things. So a tactic I like to do sometimes is in between mobs, while I'm waiting on cooldowns or while I'm regenning health or mana, I will like harvest something along the way, right? So like, let's say this daffodil is here. I'll like pull this raider back. Okay, so I kill this raider here, right? I'm missing a little bit of health. I have like maybe my flurries on cooldown. While I'm waiting for that, I just like grab 1 or 2 daffodil. And so instead of sitting down and regenning, we regen a little slower, but we are using this to not only increase our gathering levels, we're getting XP along the way, right? So it's just a little like extra tactic if you want to, especially if you're planning on doing any crafting. I recommend you know, just doing that first little quest to get your starter tools. And then you can also start to level these up because you got to get these to level 10 before you can gather anything cool, right? So it's just a nice way to start churning your way through the gathering XP while getting leveling experience along the way, while getting some materials to stock up for whatever you're going to craft later, save some rations, and, you know, just set yourself up so that you have your cooldowns and health and mana for the next mob. And we can very easily kill things our level. We can pretty reliably take on stuff 1 level above us. It's a little sketchier when you get to 2 levels above, still possible. Anything higher than that, you're probably going to want to avoid. And keep in mind, I'm only level 9 right now. Once you're 10, you're going to have double strike in the rotation as well. So make sure when you go behind with your acrobatic strike for that second backstab, you throw in a double strike for a double tap backstab immediately after. So that is the skill tree and the ability rotation. We'll take one more quick look at the weapon trees a little more in detail. Highly recommend for the daggers, starting with the bleed, just very high value. Go immediately for the 55% chance with these 3 points, and then just get a little extra damage on that bleed from these. Then we get to, I believe it's weapon level 8. We're going to be able to pick an additional thing here. I highly recommend this Keen Edge, just for the increased critical strike chance. The same reason we are constantly trying to position behind stuff with ambush. This is just going to give us a significantly better critical strike chance. And then for these secondary points, there's basically an offensive and a defensive option. If you want to go offensive, I would recommend going crit power and penetration for these. And that's just basically going to lean into the ambush passive combined with Keen Edge, combined with, you know, this just going to add to the crit stack. Pen's just going to bypass mitigation. The other thing you could do is just take the other 2 to go defensively. So you could make it so you have a higher chance to evade crits yourself. And you could also make it so your crowd control lasts longer. So your kick and your acrobatic strike, your disable power, are going to be slightly more effective. So it's kind of dealer's choice, or even almost dependent on what mobs you're killing. You can very quickly just swap these to kind of the full blast option with crit pen, or the defensive option with disable crit avoidance. For our ranged weapon, which is much less of a focus, we mainly want to use the bow to pull stuff towards us. So like this kind of zone we're in right here, it's like a little tricky with how close all the mobs are, right? So in general, for something like this, I would usually, instead of opening in stealth on this defender and the chance that this raider comes and attacks me, I would just pull this defender back like this, get him to come to me, position myself in a spot where I know mobs aren't spawning. As soon as he gets up to me, just switch to my daggers, begin my normal combo, starting from Thrash, right? So there are the main situations where you want to use your bow are situations to pull stuff to a safer spot to just give you less of a chance of extra stuff aggroing on you. And the aggro radius in this game is pretty brutal. So this will help you, you know, basically kind of manage that. So for the bow, we're using it more for the utility than we are for really anything else. Okay, so essentially we're going to get stagger. This is going to make it so the third attack with our bow reduces their ability to evade. So basically, as we're shooting them and they're getting to us for the next 6 seconds, if they're staggered, we're going to have a better chance to hit them. We're going to increase the chance of that by 10% again. It is December 1st, the last day of the Alpha 2 Phase 3 until it moves into early access on December 11th. So it looks like they're actually running some like live events on the server today. But we are busy making leveling guides. So you're going to get the 55% here, and then you're going to go just get this extra penetration for a bit of extra damage, because that seems like the kind of the best choice to me here. And then for our special ability here, we're just going to go with this refreshing follow through, so that when we are throwing some bow shots out, we're getting a bit of mana back. You could honestly pick almost any of these for the bow, depending on what you're vibing with. This is just like the little bit of extra utility, like I was referencing. And then because we're not really going to be able to use the disable power or the crit evasion much at range with a bow, I just recommend taking the pen and crit power on the bow as well. Boom. Okay, taking a look at our stamina tree. So we have our class tree, we have our 2 weapon trees, and we also have our stamina tree. I usually, on most classes, I've been going the dodge route into Spring Step. I think for Rogue, Spring Step, especially for PvE and like what we're doing right now, leveling up, Spring Step is almost a debuff, because whenever we dodge, it moves us too far out of melee range, and it just takes more time to get back to our target before we can start auto attacking again. I think these 3 talents for Rogue are really strong. However, with the amount we're moving around in stealth and the fact that we can stealth while sprinting, I really wanted to try the sprint route, and I will say this second win feels very good, especially for the amount we're kind of cruising around sprinting in stealth. So my recommendation for Rogue stamina tree is escape velocity max. This is just going to make us sprint faster the longer we're doing it in combat. Then focus sprint max, which is going to give us up to 50% resistance to crowd control effects while we're sprinting. That leads us to second win. This makes it so when we end our sprint, we get a lot of that stamina back. So this lets us like sprint up to mobs, stop sprinting, open our combat out of stealth, and then regen some significant portion of that stamina so we can still dodge during that next fight. From here, I would recommend going 1 point into evasive maneuver to make it so when you do successfully dodge, you get this increased evasion. And that's just to get this evasion online, basically. Then I would add 3 points to recuperation here to max this out and get stamina back after we successfully dodge. Then I would add the last 2 points to evasive training to max these out. I think Spring Step going to be good for like PvP in certain situations later, but for just solo grinding mobs, I don't think you even want to take Spring Step once you have this dodge path maxed out. Boom. So those are the abilities. I guess last thing to really take a look at is items. I have different items on different characters based on the RNG of drops when leveling. So this guy has a little more items than the other ones I have making guides for. I think that's just because I got lucky on RNG drops, or maybe I was playing during a week where they were testing higher drop rates. I do know for the Harbinger update on December 11th, they are adding quests so that you can get some better starting gear in this level range. So keep an eye out for quests to be able to obtain some of your starting gear, but you're going to be just fine with the starting daggers and the starting bow that you get from that first place, even up to level 10. Obviously, any upgrades you can get here are going to do just fine, but I've played most of these classes to level 10 without any gear at all, and you can absolutely still do it still. In general, I think you want to focus on physical defense. Like I was saying earlier, in general, you're going to take more physical damage than you are spell damage at this point in the game, but a lot of the rogue gear, like the dex gear, is kind of half and half. So like these river stalker things, I think that's a really, kind of safe bet, easy bet for Rogue Ranger to lean into not only the stats we're looking for, like this Dex Fizz power, but also just a little bit of a split between the Fizz and Mage defense. Beyond that, I hope everyone found this useful. I will be making more beginner's guides for the other classes, as well as taking a deeper look at Rogue after the reset on December 11th, once I have a chance to play one to higher level again. So if you want to catch those videos, other Ashes of Creation videos, or RPG content in general, be sure to subscribe to the channel. Don't forget to like and comment on the video, as that helps me out a ton, letting the algorithm push it further. But with that, I just want to thank you so much for watching, remind you to take care of yourself, and keep shredding. Catch you in the next one. Peace.